Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 193 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Glad to have you with us. Hope things are going well for you. We get together every week to talk about all things bar exam related. And if this is your first time on the podcast with us, welcome. We're glad to have you here. There are a couple of different ways you can get into this material. You can watch the video on our website by going to celebrationbarreview.com/ and then the episode number, which in this case is 193. If you prefer to listen to the podcast, you can do that on Apple iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio or pretty much any place that you get your podcasts. So just check that out. Search for the Extra Mile podcast and you can find it there. And finally, if you want to go back into our archives, we've been doing these podcasts for a few years now. You can go back all the way to episode number 1 by going to our website at celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the tab at the top for podcasts, and you'll see all of the episodes there along with show notes. So, hope you check that out. There's lots of great resources there. Now, in today's episode, we're getting close to the dates of the big jurisdictions starting to release bar results from February 2018. The first of those really large jurisdictions will be Florida. Their results are expected to be released on Monday, April 16th. There are a few other smaller jurisdictions that will be releasing that same week, and we'll let you know about those and those results as we hear about them. But Florida is obviously the first big jurisdiction to release. It'll tell us a lot about what's happening generally across the country, what the MBE numbers look like, and it's usually a pretty good canary or bellwether, if you will, to tell us what might be coming in some of these other big jurisdictions later on in the results process. If you were a Florida bar taker in February 2018, good luck. We hope the results are good for you. Certainly wish you all the best. We also know that this begins that process for many people of waiting for their results, and the process starts now. It'll go into late May, and that's a really long period of time to be sitting around waiting for your results, particularly if you're in a state like California, which releases near the end of the time frame. Now, as we start into this results season, it's a time that can be really stressful, obviously, for people that took their exams and are waiting for results. And so in today's episode, I'm bringing back a classic lecture that I gave called 5 Things to Do While You're Waiting for Your Results. I think you're going to really like it. I hope you stick around and check that out. Even if you're taking the exam later in the year, I think it's useful to know about these things. What's going to happen after the test? It's not like you just drop off the edge of the earth. So stick around for that. Now, this episode is being brought to you by our free webinar called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. It's a look at the powerful, proven way to pass, and it's free for you to attend. It'll be this Thursday on April 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That would be 4 p.m. Pacific Time. And in this webinar, we're going to take you through the 4 steps that successful bar takers follow in order to pass their bar exams. There's lots of case studies, there's lots of examples and stories, and very specific detailed information for you. I think you're going to really want to participate. It's totally free, but you do need to register. And you can do that in one of a couple of ways. You can go to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar and register there. Or if you're watching this as a video today, just scroll down this page and you'll see the button there. Or just go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com and you'll see a button that would allow you to register as well. Now, if Thursday the 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern doesn't work for you, you'll also see an option for an on-demand version of the same material. Just click that button. You can schedule your own time to watch the webinar. It's all the same great material. The only difference is I won't be there to answer your questions live, but you're welcome to send me emails and we'll respond to those promptly. So no matter how you consume that information, we really want to get you through that webinar. We think it can make a big difference in your preparation. And certainly if you're taking the July 2018 exam, this is the time to be really looking into and digging into that material. So again, Thursday the 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern for how to make the next bar exam, your last bar exam. Well, I want to go ahead and jump into today's message. As I said, I think it's important to have some idea of what to be doing while you're waiting for results beyond just twiddling your thumbs. And so I recorded this message called 5 Things to Do While Waiting for Results. I hope you like it. Well, today I'm going to be talking about a subject that's going to be on the thoughts of a lot of people right now, and that is, what do you do while you're waiting to get your bar exam results? It's a big topic, and frankly, it's a big concern for a lot of people because it's such a long period of time that some of you have to wait. Well, I'm going to offer 5 things you can do, very specific things, while you wait for your bar exam results. And for those of you who have not yet taken your bar exam, you might say, well, this is probably not very important for me. And the truth is, it's obviously more focused on those folks who've taken their exam and now are waiting. But I think it's always useful to look ahead and see what's going to be going on and what you might want to be doing or thinking about or preparing for when you get to that point where you're waiting for your results. Now, for those of you that are not terribly familiar with the process, what happens is that after the bar exam's finished, there is a fairly lengthy waiting period, but it varies from state to state. Some jurisdictions will have their results out within 5 weeks after the exam. Most jurisdictions typically wait 8 to 10 weeks or 12 weeks, and a few large jurisdictions will wait even longer than that. And what that means is that the July bar exam results, for example, for California bar takers, typically don't come out until almost Thanksgiving, mid to late November. Georgia bar takers are usually in that same kind of time period. And the first group of students that will get their results typically out of the July or the February exam, big jurisdiction, would be Florida and many of the smaller uniform bar exam administrations. And then in the middle, you've got states like Texas and New York, New Jersey, D.C., lots of jurisdictions where lots of people are taking the exam and they're just sitting and waiting. So for some of these jurisdictions, we don't actually have a specific release date, and you're literally just on pins and needles waiting for the email to show up in your inbox. So without overstating it, I think for a lot of people, this is a somewhat frightening time and a really time when you're thinking, what should I be doing? What should be going on during this time? How do you handle the stress, the emotion, and all of the feelings that go with this sudden buildup of energy to take the test? And then, poof, the air is all out of the balloon and you're just in that mode of, well, what do I do now? And how do I put it all together in my own brain? How do I reconnect with the world? What should I be doing? And I think for some people, the reality is that their results come so quickly and they close down, they do sort of a mind shut off after the exam, and they don't worry about it. And that's really good. And hopefully they get good results and they move on and everything's great. But, that kind of person is typically not the usual bar taker. Most people are not in that circumstance. And so, in my experience, this waiting time is actually pretty painful for almost every bar taker. So if you're watching this video today, my guess is it's probably because you're already thinking about that process, thinking about the what ifs and having those periodic flashbacks maybe to the exam itself. And I want to say that if you're having those kinds of flashbacks, I definitely don't want you to think that I'm making fun of you, because what's happening in a very real sense is that you're having something that we would describe clinically as a post-traumatic stress disorder. You've been through a high-stress, very difficult process, and now you've got to work through it emotionally and mentally. You have to process it. You have to literally move on with your life. And if you don't do that, it can be debilitating. It can destroy your ability to function. But the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. I've seen many, many people who literally get tied up in knots during this period of time. But I've also seen an awful lot of people figure it out, work it out, and there are some pretty good coping mechanisms that I think are useful. So what I want to do is share with you 5 specific things that you can do while you're waiting for your bar exam results. So let's jump into those. The first of these 5 things, without reference to any political organization, is that you need to move on. And what I mean by that is that you've got to find other interests, other things to replace your bar study time while you're waiting for your results. Now, for many of you, if you came from the world of law, so if you're working in a law firm as an attorney or a paralegal or in some capacity, or you were involved in some form of a legal practice, it's pretty easy. You just go back to work and you've got plenty to do. But many of you who are waiting for bar results in order to begin or advance your legal careers simply don't have that option. And so, as a result, it's really a good time, I think, to start looking aggressively to volunteer and to look for opportunities that you might not have had time for before. It's also a really good way to network, just getting out there and getting some practical experience, finding out who you can help, going to your law school, finding out what's available, what kind of internships and externships might be available. Getting yourself in some position to do some work down the road. And one of the things I love is that attorneys have been the first responders in major storms and natural disasters and on a number of political fronts. So getting yourself in a position to do some work down the road as a lawyer, a member of the bar, well, this is the time to get some experience that way. And of course, it's a great time to interview if that's going to be part of your process. Now, the reason that I suggest volunteer work right now is that because if you're not a licensed attorney, there's obviously a limited range of what you're going to be able to do. But the point is that you want to reconnect with the reason that you went through this entire trauma of law school and the bar exam in the first place. In other words, I think you need to get back to what makes you feel valuable and useful and good when you're doing legal work in the first place. I had a potential student contact me the other day who said, I really don't like lawyers and I really don't want to be a lawyer. And I said, well, then why are you taking the bar exam? And with that, they kind of went silent, and I think actually they decided not to take it. If you don't have that motivation, what are you doing here? But most people do have that motivation, and this waiting period is a great time to be doing some work in that regard. If you're really stuck about what to do or where you can help out, contact your local bar association, or maybe the political or community or nonprofit groups that you align with to find out where volunteer opportunities might exist. People like the legal aid offices, churches, nonprofits, other community groups really need lawyers and need people involved with the law as paralegals, as those who can help out, as clerks and interns. And so it's a great opportunity to get involved. And of course, if you've got a political interest, and who doesn't these days, then, I can tell you that candidates and campaigns are always looking for volunteers and helpers, and that's another terrific way to network. There are a lot of people with legal connections involved in politics. It's a great way to find out what's going on in the world and in your community. And I can tell you from my experience working on presidential campaigns at the highest level, down to school board elections at really the lowest level, I guess, candidates are always looking for volunteers, and they're always looking for helpers. And you might choose to help out a couple hours a week. Maybe it's going to be more than that depending on the year and the activity. But the point is that you want to move on with your life, and in order to do that, you have to find some things to be doing, and volunteer work is a great way to do that. All right. Item number 2, for those who've just come back from vacation, they'll recognize this one immediately. But number 2 is really important. You got to hug it out. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've got a family, and most of you do, those of you that don't have family, hopefully have some friends, and hopefully you've still got some friends left. If you've got a job, or even better, you've got a family, friends, and a job, all three, this is a really good time to reconnect with any and all of those people. Remember back when you were studying for the bar, there were all of those missed date nights and the hangout times and the work assignments that maybe you didn't get to because you just had to study. Well, you might have forgotten a lot about that, but believe me, the people around you, they remember all those missed moments. And this waiting period is a great time to make up for some of that by being extra attentive. And what I'm saying here is that I think you want to spend some additional time with friends and family, coworkers. I schedule a lot of coffees at this time of the year just to catch up with old friends and kind of see what's going on. I like to take vacation time, and because I'm so close to Disney World, that's easy to do. And I actually get the benefit of seeing students and other people I know who are coming to Disney World. So it's a great time to do these sorts of things, but you don't have to go to Disney. It's just the point of reconnecting. I would say that even for me as a teacher, I need that time back into the mainstream, into the real world. And I would encourage you to do that as well. Now, I recognize the reality is that you're probably pretty tired from studying for the bar exam and taking the test. But to the rest of the world, here's what happens. You went to the bar exam, you took the bar exam is over, that's enough. Get back to me. Get back to the world. And so while you might be struggling a bit with how to make that transition, everybody else is way past that. They have no more forgiveness. And so what I've said to my students is that your presence here on planet Earth is now required. There are no more excuses. You have to be present. You have to engage. Bar results will come soon enough, but you've got to get back into the world. Re-engaging with family and friends and work, that triple play, if you will, is really critical. You know, if you've been at work and trying to balance your work and bar study, this is particularly true for attorneys in practice who are moving jurisdictions. Well, you've got to go back and take care of those clients. You need to make sure that they know you're still there and what's going on. And your boss, your supervisor needs to know that you're still in the game. And your family and your friends need to know that too. So, that having been said, there's obviously a lot going on in the world. This is a great time to reconnect and see what's going on out there. But just remember that to everyone else, the bar exam was a finite, one-and-done kind of event. It does not have a lingering implication to them right now. And so when you start saying to everyone around you, well, you know, I'm just waiting for results. Well, the truth is they really don't want to hear about it. It's over. You need to engage, and you can't use studying for the bar as a reason to stay away from all of those obligations and connections now. So if you know that there's a list of items around your house that had to be done, this is the time you probably want to do them, and you just need to buckle down and do it. So that's number 2 on our list of the 5 things while you're waiting for your results. Number 3 is a big thing. And number 3 is you got to talk it out. Remember we said you got to move on, you got to hug it out, but now you got to talk it out. Many bar takers, not all, but many, have to get the test out of their systems. But as I just said in item number 1 about moving on, in an item to hugging it out to the rest of the world, it's totally over for you. Remember that the people around you, as I said, don't care about you or the bar exam in that context anymore, and they don't want to hear about the bar anymore. Oh, that's harsh, Jackson. I mean, really? But yeah, it's true. They really don't want to hear about the most important test in your life right now. They don't care. And it's not because they don't care about you. It's because you've been studying for the test for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever, and the people around you are just over it. They're over it, but you still have the need to talk about it. And we recognize that you absolutely have that need. And in that situation, there are a couple of things that I think you can do. One is you can certainly journal it. You can write it out, you can type it out, you can use your electronic device, you can actually use a recording device and record it and then transcribe it. You can do a lot of things, but you can certainly talk it out. You can even talk to small animals, dogs and cats. They'll listen attentively. Maybe not so much the cats, but the dogs are pretty good. And you can tell them about what's going on and how they know and understand your life and what's happened. But at the end of the day, I recognize that most of you will not be satisfied with a conversation with a cat, and you're probably going to want to talk to a real human being. And so what I would suggest is that you go into a room with some human in your life and you say, look, I just have to talk this out one single time. I've got to go through it. I've got to tell you all of the miserable details. I've got to share with you all of the craziness and my concerns and my fears and all of those things. But here's the key. You tell that person, in exchange for that opportunity, I promise you it's one and done. I'm just going to do it. I'll get it over with, and I'm going to get it out of my system. We're going to have this conversation. I'll talk to you. I'll tell you everything that's gone on. I'm going to spill my guts, and then I promise I'm finished. There'll be no more. I'm not going to let it dribble out over time in little pieces. It's literally one and done. And if this kind person is a spouse, a partner, a close family member, maybe you could bribe them with a lunch or a dinner or something fun. Maybe you could go to a baseball game if it's that time of the year. And while you're watching the game, I'll regale you with all the bar exam stories, because really, what could be better than watching baseball and talking about the bar exam? And as you begin to do all of those things, I think what you'll begin to discover is that you actually purge yourself. You get it out of your system. You force yourself to be done with it. And because the deal that you made was, I'm going to talk it out and then I'm really over it, you need to stick to that deal. I mean, really and truly, if someone is brave enough to listen to you talk about the bar exam from their perspective ad nauseum, you need to be willing to hold up your end of the deal and say, okay, once I've talked this through with you, I'm really done with it until results come out. No worry, we'll just get to that point. So I hope that that would be useful for those of you that are in a course where you really feel like you've just got to have some opportunity to let it out. Now, if you're in our course at Celebration Bar Review, you have an additional forum where you actually can talk to real human beings, which is our private Facebook group. And that's a place where you can come, talk about the exam, vent, ask questions, and it's a great resource to be able to talk about your experiences. In fact, we do weekly group coaching calls where you can come on and talk with other bar takers, and it's moderated by a staff member, and you can vent about everything that happened in the exam. And I know that many of our students have made those connections, and they tell me that these coaching calls are a great source to just say, here's what I saw, here's what I heard, here's what I think about or feel about the test, and to do that in a supportive environment. And I encourage you to do that. So if you're in our course, please make sure that you participate in those group coaching calls. I think they're great even after the bar exam. Now, if you're not in our course, perhaps you're in a course that gives you something similar, and that's great. But if you're in one that doesn't allow you to do that, I think there are still other places where you can go online and you can post your thoughts, you can write about them, you can communicate in a digital world. But in some event and in some way, I think you've got to talk it out. And I do think, and the reason I mention it to you, the need to talk it out, is that if you don't get it out, it's going to turn into a volcano. What I mean by that is that the pressure will just keep building and building, and then it's going to erupt, and that's what we don't want to happen. So in some way, find a journal, write about it, talk to your dog, talk to a family member, make a deal that you'll go on Facebook in a group post somewhere, you'll go crazy with your Twitter account, you'll Snapchat to your heart's content, but do something and get it out. So that's number 3, talk it out. All right, number 4 in our list of 5 things, when we're thinking about what you need to be doing about while you're waiting for results, is to assume the best. Folks, I don't know how to say this with any more emphasis or belief or concern. Bar takers and lawyers generally are terrific at what we call the parade of horribles. You know what that is. It's all the bad things that can happen or would happen or should happen. There's the parade, and I'm going to run to the front of the parade to lead it. Now, you know, it is entirely possible that you failed the bar exam. We know that. But it's also entirely possible that you passed the bar exam. We know that too. And here's the difficulty. There is no way for most of you, and I would say after 25 years of doing this, so more than 50 administrations of the bar exam, I would say in my experience there's probably been fewer than 3% of the people I've talked to who actually definitively, for a fact, know that they passed their bar exam after they've taken it and before the results come out. They just don't know. Most people don't know. Very few people are absolutely certain. Now, there are some people that are absolutely certain they failed it, then they usually have a reason like my computer stopped working and I didn't write something, or I got sick, or I didn't finish all of the questions. And there could be some reasons why you would absolutely know that you failed. But again, those people are at the margins, and the vast majority of people, I would say well over 90% of the bar takers, are in this middle ground where it's not clear if you passed or failed. You may have an inclination, but you really don't know. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to jinx myself by saying I passed, or I don't want to make it such that, I act like I passed and then I failed, and then I'm kind of feeling miserable and I'm embarrassed. And the point is that if you have these feelings, you're pretty normal. And the people that don't want to talk about them, I certainly understand. Now, when people tell me how they did after the test, I would say most bar takers have a sort of general direction that they're headed in. They'll say, in essence, I feel pretty good about the test, or I don't feel very good about the test. And while that's helpful to know, by and large, most people really don't know how they did, and they don't know what the results are going to be when they come out. So my 4th tip is that you need to assume the best. And because this test has such a narrow range of acceptability of passing, and it's such a fine line distinction of whether you made it or not, you know, I've said in other places, you're only one answer away from passing, and that's really true. 1 or 2 questions might make the difference, and you simply won't know that in advance. So I think for your own mental health and sanity, and the sanity of everyone around you, you should assume that you passed. Now, that's my view. You should assume that you passed and not be afraid. If you're in our course, I think you should assume you passed based on our statistical results. Even if you took one of those horrible big box bar reviews and you did all that crazy IRAC memorization, rule, issue spotter stuff, you still should assume that you passed. Now, the statistics aren't so good for them, but you really should assume that it worked out. And here's the interesting part. A lot of people that went to these big box bar reviews come to me during this period of time, and they say something to the effect of, Well, I did everything that my big box bar review told me to do. I memorized, I made flashcards, I created outlines, I did this and this and this. I took their tests, I got back my anonymous graded essays, but I'm pretty sure I failed. So I'd like to start studying now. And that really raises an interesting question, and I want to address it. I generally say to people that if they think that they're in that situation, they probably shouldn't do that. They shouldn't start studying before they get their results unless they are fairly definitively certain that something went wrong during the test. If there was a technology failure, or you didn't write one of the essays, or you didn't complete a performance test, or you only finished, say, 75 out of 100 MBE questions in one of the 2 sessions. If something of that nature happened, and then I think you could say it's very likely that you failed, then I think, okay, it's great, start studying now. But for most people, studying right now before you get your results is not a good idea. And the reason is that it simply extends your study period without any break. And for a lot of people, that's a really bad plan. I think you need the mental and physical break. You need the distance and the time to be able to say, this is what I was doing, and now I'm back at it. You need to take that refreshment break. Now, let's look at this a little bit more, and I would encourage people to start fresh if it's necessary. Now, I certainly recognize that for those of you in the late reporting results states like California and Georgia, it puts you under a lot of pressure, and it's very hard when you've got to then turn around and take the exam with 7 or 8 weeks to go. But here's the good news. You've already studied for the test, even if you took that crappy big box bar review. So the next time around should be a review of the review. And I don't know that it's as critical for you as it might be for somebody that's just coming out of law school or someone who's about to take the bar after 10, 15, 20 years away from the test. So in a sense, I don't think you're at as much of a disadvantage as you might think. Now, truthfully, it's better if you're taking the Florida bar, for example, and you get your results 6 weeks after the exam. That's giving you an extra 4 to 6 weeks of study over someone, let's say, from California. But here's the reality. You're in the same boat with all the other Florida bar retakers if you're taking the Florida bar, or all the other California repeaters if you're in that situation. So my general suggestion is don't start your restudy now. Don't pull out your old materials. Don't pull out your outlines. Don't listen to lectures. Don't do flashcards. Somebody said to me after the bar exam, I'm going to do 50 multi-state questions a night from now until the results come out. And I said, why? To what purpose? You don't know if you passed or failed. You don't know what that studying is going to be doing. And what that means is at best it's unfocused, or at worst it's just miserably useless. And I don't think there's any reason to put yourself through that. So why not take the time and do the other steps we talked about instead? Talk to other people, reconnect, volunteer, have a life. And then if the results turn out to be not good, all right, you deal with it. And we've got a video where I talk about 5 things to do if you failed the bar exam. But you see, I think what happens is that we get into this mindset of assume the worst because we're lawyers, and therefore we just basically assume that we've all failed. And then because we assume we fail, we just think we have to start studying right away. I have, and I mean this quite honestly and sincerely, I have never seen anyone during my time as a teacher studying during this interim waiting period where I honestly believed it made a bit of difference for them ultimately in their results. Never, not once. Now, I know some of those people passed, but a lot of them didn't. And I actually believe if you just took the time off, if you put your hands and you took them off the keyboard and you went and did something else for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, you'd be much better off when your studies resume than if you simply studied all the way through and didn't take any break at all. But I realize that's a counterintuitive position. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that say, oh, I've got to start right away if I took the bar. Just start studying right away for the next one. And most of those people are really going to be just crazed when they get to the next bar exam. So my view is that you can do a lot better things with these few weeks than to be studying for the test. All right. Well, that takes us to item number 5 on our list of 5 things that you should be doing while you wait for your results. And it's actually kind of linked to this one up to the point where I said you need to know and move on with your life and hug it out with your family and friends and work. You need to talk it out with other people. I said in number 4, you should assume the best. But my 5th step is that you should do your research. Now look, if it turns out that you did fail the exam, those moments and hours after you get your results are really tough emotionally, and that's putting it mildly. it is not the best time for most people to consider what their next step should be. So if you're one of those kinds of people, where it's a good day, and you pass, great. But if it's not, and you're one of those, I don't think this is going to be a good day kind of people, then, I'm thinking about, I guess, Eeyore versus Piglet or Pooh. You remember Piglet and Pooh, today is my best day ever. But Eeyore is like, yeah, it's not such a great day. But if it were a good day, I don't think it would be a good day. If you're one of those people that sees the gloom in everything, then here's the way to respond. Use this time to do your research. If everything I've told you still doesn't convince you that you've got a chance of passing, then use this time to think about what you want to do if you fail. Now, if you don't fail, do you want to sit? Do you want to sit for another bar exam? Do you want to try and take your UBE score and apply it somewhere else? Do you want to change jurisdictions? And if you do fail, what next? Do you want to take the next administration of the exam? Do you want to look at different jurisdictions? And years ago, we wouldn't say much about changing jurisdictions. But I'll say that what's happened now with the Uniform Bar Exam is that we've got a shifting landscape. So we have tests that have changed their form, going from a state exam to the UBE and being transferable in the scores. And those scores are different, even though the test is the same. So maybe what you want to do if you took the New York UBE is think to yourself, if I don't pass, maybe what I want to do is take the UBE again, but focus on a jurisdiction with a lower score like Missouri or New Mexico or someplace that would give me a chance to get barred even if I didn't make the New York threshold. The point I'm trying to make is that it's okay to think about those things and to evaluate them. California just went through a big change in the format of the exam. So there were a number of people that started thinking, maybe what I want to do is put my attention on California when it goes to a 2-day test. And the same is true if they change their pass score. So the point is that there are things that are happening in the bar exam world that might make you say, I want to think about which exam I would take if I had to retake, or where I want to take it, or when I want to take it. And this would be particularly significant for retakers if you get your results late in the game and you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to sit for the February bar exam, or do I want to wait and start my studies for the July bar exam? And so maybe that's a better idea in certain circumstances. But the time to think about all of those things is now. It is not the day the results come out. And the point that I really want to make is that it's a good idea to prepare in advance, particularly if you're someone that's been taking a big box bar review. There might be a little small voice in your head that sounds remarkably a bit like mine saying, hello, the emperor has no clothes. That course doesn't work well. Those big box bar reviews have a 30 to 35% pass rate nationally based on what they're doing. Maybe you should think about doing something differently. And if that's been part of your thought process, then the time to think about it, to evaluate and do your due diligence is now. One of the ways you can do that would be to join me in our free live webinars called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. And we'll put a link to it on this page as well. We do those every week so that you have the opportunity to evaluate and see what else is out there and what would be different for you and how successful students have prepared for their bar exam. This is a great opportunity to do that if you want to dip your toe in that water while you're waiting for results. So my point is that in any event, I think it's time for you to start doing your research about what's going on, what the tests are, what the jurisdictions are, what the bar reviews are. What do you want in your life? Do you want a mentored course? If you were in our course and you didn't use personal or premium mentoring, maybe you want to do that. Maybe you know that you want to take advantage of tools like photo reading or paraliminals or some of the other resources we offer in our course. The point is that if you feel like you need to do something, think about what you could do differently if you did not succeed. And all of those, I think, are really good questions to ask. But they're not particularly easy questions to answer in the heat of the emotion of results coming out. And so I encourage you to take the time now to talk to the people that you want to talk to, make the decisions that you think you might have to make later. Be prepared. If the news comes out for you and you pass, that's great news. You can throw all that research away, or you can put it online, or you can tell people, hey, you should take Jackson's course, it's pretty good. But if not, if you didn't do well, if you didn't pass, then you've got a plan that's been prepared in advance, and there's a limited amount of disruption in your life. You just transition right into the work that you need to know and that you have to do. So I think that one of the things that's really important is that you owe it to yourself to find out what your options are, particularly when it comes to a bar review course. Find out why our students, for example, are so passionate about what we do and why we get the results that we get. And I would encourage you to do that. If you're in a big box bar review, think about it. What are people saying about that course? Did they love it? Did they like it? Did it work for them? Check it out. Think about it now while you're still more rational than in that moment when maybe you don't feel quite so rational. You know, I'll say that that's one of the keys in my mind, is to be thinking about these things, planning and preparing. Well, I wanted to give you these 5 tips about what you could be doing while you're waiting. And I would suggest in recapping that what you want to do is go ahead and move on with your life while you're waiting. Get involved in volunteer activities or work or internships, or just getting back to work. Secondly, reconnect with the world, with your family, your friends, and your job. Third, talk to somebody. Talk to your Facebook group. Talk to your journal. Talk to your cat. Write it down. Do something. Talk to a family member if you can negotiate that, but get it out of your system. Fourth, I want you to assume the best and not try to start your restudy immediately after the bar exam is over and before results come out. And finally, number 5, do your research now in case you don't have good results. Know what your plan is going to be. What exam do you want to take? What jurisdiction do you want to take? When do you want to study? How many hours are you going to use? What level of service? What bar review course? What approach are you going to take? Have ideas about all of those things in advance of the results. And having said all of this, I want to just summarize and end by saying that I hope all of you who are watching have great results. I'm looking forward to that, particularly if you're in our course. And I think that based on feedback from our students, we're going to continue to see good results from the people that were in Celebration Bar Review courses around the country. We expect that, even though the exams were quite difficult and the pass rates overall are continuing to decline around the country. If you took the exam and you don't feel good about what happened, I just want you to know that part of that is literally the trauma of taking the test, and much of that feeling will begin to recede from your brain. It'll begin to move away as time goes on, and you'll begin to reconnect into the world. That's a good thing, and something that we really hope that you'll do. Now, I appreciate all of you who are checking this out and finding and asking questions, and I invite you to find out more about us and about our approach and what we can do to help you. But for all of you, I really hope that the results when they come out are favorable and that we see your name on the pass list in the very near future. Thanks. Well, that's our message for today. I hope you found it useful, and I appreciate you checking out all those possibilities of things to do while you're waiting for your bar results. And again, we hope your results are favorable if you were part of the February 2018 class. So just want to remind you that this Thursday, the 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, our live presentation of how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Make sure you get registered for that by going to our website or celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. Or if you've been watching today's episode on video, just scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can register from there. And then we'll see you all next week. We should have those Florida results out by the time we broadcast next week, and look forward to good results for people as those results are coming out. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.